Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour, and for this particular installment, I'm going to be reaching up off camera. I thought it's a tiny bit unsightly, but it's preferable to me standing on a step stool any more than I have to. So I'm going to be reaching up to this top shelf here. And the first one we have is a duplicate. This is another copy of the Norton new translation of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. This is translated by Michael Nyland with an excellent cover blurb. I mean, sure, there are blurbs on here from other people, but the top blurb is from yours truly, and so it makes a place on the shelf apparently twice. Then we have something from Modern Library. Oh, okay, this doesn't belong here. I have a bookcase for this kind of thing, but this is great. This is the Modern Library volume that collects a whole bunch of tidbits and interesting bits and pieces from George Clemson's Paris Review. This is the writer's chapbook. Little bits and pieces from writers on all aspects of the job, from work habits to allegedly ignoring book reviews to all that sort of thing. Really a neat anthology, really, really good. Modern Library tends to do that. Their books tend to be really good. But it doesn't belong here. Thematically, it doesn't belong here. I'll deal with that in due time. Oh my, okay, this is an absolute treat. When you're in book reviewing professionally, which those of you who are new to this channel, maybe you're finding this for the first time, that's what I do. I'm a book reviewer, and one of the few left anywhere in the world who lives doing that and doesn't do anything else, don't have a side gig teaching or Substack or anything like that. And when you're in that, at least for me, I'm not high profile, I'm not a deep thinking intellectual darling. Several of my colleagues and friends are, but I'm not. So when you're at my level of the game, you're really not in it for the money. You're in it for other things. And for me, I'm in it for the conversation. I'm in it for my reviews getting talked about, joining the collective conversation on the new releases of the day. And a fringe benefit of that really helps, you see it here in this Art of War, is to be on a book. To be printed on a book. If you're printed on a book, well, that has a wider life than anything you could ever write for a periodical. That's going to end up in bookstores and secondhand shops. It's going to be on people's shelves. People that didn't expect to find it are going to find it. And they're going to see your blurb, which is always thrilling, but it's extra thrilling when it's your name on the blurb. And that was true for this. This is Tales from the Ant World by the late Edward Wilson, and it has a blurb by me from Boston Globe on the cover above the author's name, which is an amazing thrill. And I tipped in here the gorgeous review that the Globe did. They in addition to running it, they gave it such a wonderful look. Look at that. Look at how amazing that is. The title of the review, they gave it the title, "It's the Ant's World, We Just Live in It," by Steve Donoghue, Globe correspondent. How wonderful is that? That is just amazing to have original artwork like that on your review. So of course I saved it and I put it with the book. No doubt about that. Okay, then we have a paperback release of a book I really, really enjoyed. This is by Justin Spring, and it's The Goremans Way, 6 Americans in Paris. And the start of kind of new thinking about eating and cooking and restauranting that came in the wake of World War II. This book came out, I think, in 2019, 2017. And I got it. I didn't review it. I really liked it. And then I got the trade paperback and realized, when I got the trade paperback, it reminded me of how much I really liked it. So I put it in here. I'm not 100% sure that I liked it that much. I'm not a foodie, after all. Okay, then we have these old Bob's Merrell paperbacks. You see them sometimes. Some of the things that they did in this old run are amazing. They all look like this. There's no artwork, no cover design whatsoever. They saved money everywhere they could. And some of the stuff that they did is amazing. These don't exist anymore, so you have to find them used. And I found an essay on dramatic poesy by John Dryden, in which he sort of lays out the skeleton, the nerve center, and the groundwork of my profession, of book reviewing, of literary criticism, back when those two things were kind of sort of the same thing. I'm a big fan of Dryden. I don't think there are any bigger Dryden fans in the world today. And So I'll read anything that he does, even his second-rate stuff I'll do. But I think that his writing on criticism is amazing. Just where he's sort of feeling his way to understanding what this is. What is the difference between me just writing an essay in which I appreciate something as I read it in my study versus criticizing it? What is the difference between those two things? He did a great job, obviously not a definitive job, since I'd say probably 80% of the reading population thinks those two things still are the same thing. They aren't. Then what have we got here? Oh, great. All right. This is the great short story writer, Elizabeth Bowen. This is a nonfiction work of hers, A Time in Rome. Travel writing, essentially, of hers. That I've often found that really, really talented writers will be great when they do travel writing. Usually it's because somebody has dangled a short check in front of them, so they'll stop whatever it is they're doing, whatever work they're doing, that they should be doing, any fiction that they're doing that they're agonizing over, and they will write a book on Venice or Florence or Rome or whatever. And I've found that those books, I've made a little informal study of them. They're usually wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Then we have, this is a little bit ratty. I could stand to have this, find another copy of this, and I'm sure that I will. I'm sure that the Brattle will provide. I got this, 30 years ago? Yeah, 30 years ago. This is Roger Lancelyn Green, who's come up before in this library tour. He was educated in the Edwardian era and wrote a whole bunch of myth retellings that I just love. He never wrote a book that I didn't love. And this is a little thing of his called Tales the Muses Told, which isn't a retelling of, the great thunderous stories of Perseus or Theseus or anything like that. It isn't the labors of Hercules. It isn't the Trojan War. Instead, this is little transformation stories, little things that are maybe 10, 15 lines in Ovid or something like that. He turns a very light, graceful, poetic hand to retelling those stories, and I love it. Well, I'm partial to his work anyway. So I don't have it all together, but I'm partial to it. Okay. Well, all right. This this has come up on this channel before. It's just a wee bit unclassifiable. I guess you could say it's for the gays. This is by Bruce Grether, and it is called Moon Tusk. This is book 1, Rendezvous in a Ruined City. There you have two husky men necking, and in the background there's a planet that looks like Saturn, and there's a giant mastodon. All of that ties into this book, which is a kind of science fiction fantasy with heavily erotic gay overtones to it. It's difficult to describe. Some of the men in this story are telepathically bonded to their mastodons, but they also want to get lucky with their own. It's almost impossible to describe this, except that it's such a hoot of a reading experience. Kind of kills me that I have never followed this series. I keep meaning to. I think this is probably the third time in a library tour that I've mentioned that I brought this book up, shown it to you, said that I loved it, and then mentioned that I haven't followed up the series. I know there are other books in the Moon Tusk series that I just haven't got to. I really should. Okay, this next one is a dog book. This is, in my opinion, the greatest dog book ever written. This is Rick Bass's book, Coulter, about a hunting dog of his, which, you'd think of that, you'd think maybe Steve wouldn't like it for that reason, since hunting is amoral. But nevertheless, I not only read the book, even though that's what it's about, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think this is one of the best, most poetic, most touching meditations on the relationship between a human and a dog that I've ever read. And I've read a lot of them. I've read a whole lot of them. So that's up there. And then we've got a Transwise book. This is Vincent Katz's translation of the poems of Propertius. Charmed is what he decides to call it. It has a long introduction. The introduction is incredibly good in this thing, just amazingly good. Very, very novelistic and heartfelt. And the translations aren't bad either. I don't remember if this is bilingual. It is bilingual, so you get the Latin on one side and the English on the other. Then we have another thin book. What is this? Oh, great. All right, this is Hiroshima. I found this in a hardcover in 2015, so before we were talking to each other. I found this in a hardcover with a dust jacket. This is, the author just tells the story of a handful of people, here they are, who were caught in the atomic bomb blast over Hiroshima. What were they doing that morning? It was a beautiful summer morning. No one expected the end of the world. No one expected literal science fiction. None of these people expected that they would undergo something that no one in history had ever undergone before. No one expected that. They were all going about their business. They had a whole day planned, good or bad or indifferent. Picture your own day. And then all of a sudden, the sky turned to fire. And they were hurled across the room, hurled through a wall, burned really badly, disoriented, and caught in a post-apocalyptic nightmare because they weren't the only ones. The whole city was writhing in agony. And the author here captures it perfectly. This was a whole issue of The New Yorker, famously, when it came out. And it still has all of that power. It's an amazingly powerful book. Okay, then we have, this is an old hardcover of Brideshead Revisited. That I reinforce this with clear plastic packing tape. The next time I love this edition. We saw already another edition. I don't think I have it within reach. No, I don't have it within reach. We saw the old BBC Granada TV paperback with the cast of the miniseries. I love this hardcover. If I can find it in hardcover, this is the one that I like, because that is the iconic fountain. The fountain at the giant country estate of Brideshead plays kind of a pivotal role in all the different parts of the book. At least a kind of a signpost role. You can look at the fountain and tell a lot about the state of the world in the story. And I love this novel. I've done read-alongs on it. I invite you to read it. You absolutely should. And then trust me, the next time I find this particular copy at the Brattle, I will grab it and put a regular dust jacket over it instead of my barbaric reinforcements. Then we have this old paperback. This is J. Christopher Harold wrote a book, a biography of Madame de Stael, Mistress to an Age. I love the original artwork there on the cover. I just love it. This has had a million different editions. I could easily have this in something newer, something more durable, a hardcover, but I love this particular edition, so I just keep it. Although, I shouldn't keep it in here. It's a biography, so it doesn't belong in here. Much as I love it, it belongs somewhere else. I have a whole biography section, including lots and lots of books I love. So the fact that I love the book doesn't mean that it belongs in here. Oh my God, same thing with this one. This is The Life and Letters of Charles Russell Lowe by Edward Emerson. I have, well, let's just say I have a lot of books on the Lowell family and on Charles Russell Lowell. I certainly have enough, as many of you have pointed out, I have enough of those books to write a biography of my own. Charles Russell Lowell hasn't had a biography in decades. I have enough of those books to write a biography of my own without necessarily needing to go far afield. All of the primary sources that I would need to consult to write a biography of Charles Russell Lowell, in addition to all of these secondary sources, all of those primary sources are within 10 minutes of where I live right now, as are all the graves of all the important players. So I could do that. I'm ideally situated and I'm utterly fascinated by the subject. I just haven't done it, that's all. But even so, this is a biography just like Mistress of the Age. It does not belong in here. Oh, okay. We saw this next one we've seen before many times. This is the old Centers for Civilization series from the University of Oklahoma Press. They did a series of little hardcovers of books studying a certain place or time or political environment through the lens of a certain city at a certain time. And it's fascinating when that happens. And it's all historical stuff, Thebes and Athens and the age of Pericles and whatnot. And they overjoyed me by letting Walter Muir Whitehill, who was a wonderful, wonderful guy and who was the Boston historian and literary poobah of the age, they let him do a book called Boston in the Age of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And the book is wonderful too. As a book about Boston, it ranks right up there. There have been thousands. But you could make a list, you could make a shelf with 10 books on it, and that would be on there. And then we have a battered old paperback. What is... Oh, okay. All right. This doesn't belong here. I have a place for books like this. This doesn't belong here. This is an old Wordsworth classic. I got this a couple of years ago, hauled it on this channel. This is the Dryden translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. So a poet I really, really love translating my single favorite book. This is in really, really ratty condition. I reinforced it, but I even so don't think that it could stand a read. It belongs over with the classics, which needs to expand. The classic section in this room needs to expand. I've got classics everywhere now because I keep getting good editions of them. This is not a good edition. It is good. It's a wonderful rendition of the poem, But I want a better version of this. I want a hardcover with a dust jacket, maybe illustrations. I want some sort of commemorative or leather-bound edition, provided it's really sturdy. This is sort of a placeholder. But even as a placeholder, it doesn't belong on the shelf. It belongs on the classic shelf. Okay, this next one has an author you may know. This is Belisarius, Hero, General, Man by Steve Donoghue. Complete with an ISBN. I was working with someone in a bookstore, and she was taking a publishing class, and she needed to go the whole 9 yards. She needed to find a manuscript, mock it up as a book, give it an ISBN, set it all together as sort of a practicum in her class. And she cast around at work one day, does anybody know what I could use? And I told her, well, you can use, I have a story that you can use as a novel. You can use it as the entree to a novel. The story is something that I have been working on my whole creative life. It's the only thing I've ever written that just doesn't feel ready, just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel finished, so I've never finished it. It's called Belisarius Out in the Dark Running. And it's about the Roman general Belisarius, who was the last flicker of Roman military genius before the light went out completely. And this coworker changed it. She didn't leave it its original title, but she did print it. 1996. Which is kind of amazing. She even gave it a pretty border there. It's kind of amazing to see your own work printed like that. Not for you authors out there, but for me at the time in 96, it very much was. So of course, it's the ultimate keepsake. So I kept it. Okay, then we have a novel. This is great. This is Robert Harris's novel Pompeii, which is about the eruption of Vesuvius. It's about the eruption that buried Pompeii and Herculaneum, and as such, it follows in the footsteps of a whole bunch of novels that are more or less hinging around that famous thing, that famous story, the most famous of which once upon a time was The Last Days of Pompeii, where you tell the stories of a whole bunch of people going about their daily lives, and you interest the reader in them, but the reader is extra interested because the reader knows how all of those stories are going to end. And the participants don't know. None of them know. None of them can even guess how the day is going to end, or why we're going to be interested in them 2,000 years later. And Harris draws on that kind of narrative tension very much, very expertly in this book, but he adds a twist in that, to a limited extent, as much as can be known, one of his characters does know what's going to happen. One of his characters is a hydrologist from Rome who's been sent to the Bay of Naples to figure out the problem with the aqueducts. Water has stopped flowing. Now, as contemporary readers, we know that's because major eruptions are preceded by earthquakes, and that can break pipes, that can unseat carefully laid out stonework, and suddenly your water's not flowing anymore. The hydrologist doesn't know all of that, but he knows quickly in the course of this novel, relatively quickly in the course of this novel, he begins to understand that Vesuvius is the problem, and that a bigger problem is coming than just a stop in water flow. And there are all kinds of plots that weave all around that, including a bad guy. There's a bad guy. The volcano is not the bad guy in this book. It's engrossing. In my opinion, this is an author I really like, but in my opinion, this is easily the best thing that he ever wrote. And then the last one here for this tour. Oh no. Okay. All right. This is M.A. DeWolf Howe. We've met M.A. DeWolf Howe a few times on this channel because we're just that nerdy. And this is his book, John J. Chapman and His Letters. John J. Chapman is a lot like Charles Russell Lowell. I could write a book about him. I'm the only one who could. I could easily access all of his original materials, all sorts of stuff that hasn't been consulted by anyone. Is here. It's 10 minutes away. He was once upon a time a literary light, and he is absolutely invigorating to read now, 100 years later. And this is one, I've mentioned this in a few recent videos, that these early Life and Letters volumes are invaluable because the compiler has access not only to all the living relatives and all the friends who clammed up or burned stuff or had stuff get lost in a basement flood or whatever in the intervening decades, but also the writer of these original Lives and Letters is going to include a lot of trivia, a lot of small stuff that later biographers don't think to include, and that's that's bad, right? Later biographers are making a bigger narrative out of this stuff when they shouldn't be. I don't think that's what most readers are interested in, especially if the subject's obscure. Then the reader does want to know, what do you have for breakfast? In a way that maybe they don't want to know that for Charles de Gaulle, but they want to know it for an obscure figure, or they wouldn't be coming to a biography of that figure in the first place. So books like this are invaluable, but it doesn't belong here. That's a good third of this shelf. The Writer's Chapbook, Mistress of the Age, Charles Russell Lowell, John J. Chapman, the Ovid's Metamorphoses, the Sextus Propertius. That's a huge chunk of this shelf. It doesn't belong where it is now. So that's one of the joys of these library tours, is that they help to reorganize. My last one helped me enormously, and I'm sure that this one will too. But that's it for this shelf. The next one is going to be a challenge. I'm going to need to get up on a step stool to do it. Because I'm not going to take the Protestant way out of pulling the books off the shelf and leaving the shelf empty while I talk about them, please. No, I'm going to go climbing, and if I die, well, you'll have that on your conscience forever. And on that note, thank you, BookTube.